done this before?
I have. No prep on this one, so I have no idea what we're talking about. But
Well, let's do
I guess that's the point.
non-hostile things about your wonderful company and, and your story. But I mean, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, it's a division of Hewlett-Packard. No, actually, not everyone realized that it's a new company.
It's a separate company.
It's 10 years old or something
Correct.
like that. Because we all have the history, or at least the ones who had some entrepreneurial story about Hewlett and Packard and the garage in Palo Alto, but that goes back nearly 100 years.
1939 was when they founded the company.
There you go. And then Hewlett-Packard, we always had either a printer or something or a laptop, but why Hewlett-Packard Enterprise?
Yeah, so it was about, I think, 10 years ago when, the company covered everything from, printers and ink to, computers and, they had already divested kind of the original, or a lot of the original around, test instrumentation, oscilloscopes, logic analyzers, that kind of thing. So I think it was just, kind of that point in the market or the leadership or whatever decided, the company's, it's too big. It's too, it's trying to cover, it needs to be more focused. And so we have a natural kind of alignment from kind of a consumer-based business versus an enterprise-based business. So the original HP then essentially split into two new companies. So even though I like to say, our heritage is really still with HP in a lot of ways, especially on the culture, but it kind of became two separate companies at that point.
Before we continue, I want to highlight, this is not a sponsor content. Just in case. So Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, it's more known to this audience, but within HPE, you are the director of HPE Labs. So can you explain us what is the role, what's the size of HPE?
Yeah, so HPE as a company now is just under 70,000 employees.
70,000?
70,000, so covering everything from, there's a big, now with having acquired Juniper, there's a large networking component, so both wireless and wired. So that's kind of one of the, product group, product line, foundations. So networking and then hybrid cloud, which includes all of the, hybrid cloud platforms, enterprise storage, and some of our other offerings. And then, there's a large compute business, which spans everything from supercomputers, both classical as well as AI supercomputers, and more or less your volume servers. So that's a quick rundown of.
So what's the core business of HPE?
It's those three items. It's essentially kind of equal across those now.
Right.
And so you asked about the labs group. So we're the applied research group that works across all of that. So my job in the portfolio, we manage our projects that cover all three of those major areas. And the one story I will tell, our legacy goes back, we're coming up on our 60th year as an organization, as a labs team. And for those that don't know the story, it's actually pretty interesting. When Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard, the founders, the company had grown to the point where, and this was in, I guess it would be the 60s, if I do my math right. It had grown to the point where they're like, okay, they were growing, it was doing well. Some engineers, product team came in one day to Bill Hewlett and said, hey, we got this great new idea. It's going to be a calculator that will fit in your shirt pocket. And I guess the intermediaries, that were kind of managing the products before, it got all the way to the CEOs, basically said, look, this is a crazy idea. No one would ever want that. Like, what are you doing? You're wasting time. So somehow they do an end around. They get to Bill Hewlett. And he's like, you know what? That's a pretty good idea. Tell you what, if it will fit in my shirt pocket, and you can, demonstrate this. We'll have a go at it. So the story is, and this has been confirmed many times, they literally went and connected with his wife, actually got a shirt, measured his pocket, so that when they came to do the demo, it's like, okay, it passed the test. So, and then of course they put it into production. It was a great hit. But the lesson learned from that, and that was really the foundation of the labs being started. He says, we're at the point now where we do need a group that's kind of looking beyond the horizon, looking for kind of these disruptive opportunities, and so that you're not just, completely, kind of in the day-to-day work and the trappings of just the here and now. So that was literally what motivated the start of the team.
As a director today of the modern era, what's the equivalent of sending people to the director's wife to check the pocket? So what would the equivalent these days? Fusion, quantum? What's the revolutionary thing that those pesky engineers are thinking?
Yeah, it's it can come from a number of different ways, and that's always something we're pretty passionate about. And we say this all the time: having avenues. If there's a great idea anywhere in the company, it doesn't matter what the role is, we want a way to vet that. And so we have a number of mechanisms internal where we can, source some of these items. One is a large kind of annual technical conference we do, and it's just like a submitting to SC or a lot of conferences where you submit an abstract, there's a review committee. So we get a lot of ideas that come through that. Other
because
things,
that's the ruthless. That's the nice part of the story. But how many, let's say, equivalent of Kodak digital photo stories have you missed?
Oh, plenty.
And how do you realize that?
How do you realize you've missed it, or that
because
you're
the
going to
guys
miss
left and founded a new company?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. So sometimes right timing's everything, and it's rare that the market or Wall Street or something will often say, oh well, they missed this, whatever. And most companies really don't. They know the trends that are coming. It's just a question of, well, do they have the ability to invest, or what do you stop doing in order to do something else? And then you get, some management teams that are more aggressive than others. So there are a lot of factors, but yeah, I can point to a lot of things that honestly we've had working in the lab. I can remember a project in the early 2000s, the first time I saw it. It was called Utility Data Center. That was the name of the project. And it was exactly what it sounds like. It was, the model, the early start for what became public cloud. But, just things didn't line up, or it didn't take the right vision to say, we're going to double down on this and make a go at it.
People I just read it, and you correct me if the numbers are not correct, but it's a $35 billion company in revenue or something like that, 70,000 people, and still there are limited resources. And those, which is a little bit of an analogy with people thinking in a room, okay, I work for a national lab or a university or a startup. I wish I could work for a larger organization where they can support my dreams. You're a manager. What are the decisions? Because at some stage, as a manager, you end sounding like a politician. You need to spread your resources. Do you have a mandate? Do you have a decision? Or you have a board? Not necessarily the company board. Your advisory board, in order to say, okay, I have 25 projects. I can pay for 5 of them.
Yeah, it's multi-level for us for what goes into our portfolio. It's a little bit like a financial portfolio. We have a handful of projects that I would say are, closer to basic research. It might be 5-10 years away, but it's important for us to have a perspective on that to understand. Look, when is the right time to invest more? Go back a couple of years, quantum, good example of that. 15 years ago, we were doing more or less basic research in quantum. But we saw, it's not going to be commercially viable for quite some time, so pivot, go invest, do something else. But then, so that's kind of the far edge of the portfolio. The center part is, things that are, maybe 3 years out. So N plus maybe 2 product generations out. AI is changing a lot of that. It's compressing, I think, a lot of these time scales. And then the front end are just things, okay, what can we be doing now because we have the right expertise or skill set that can, benefit a product team right now.
Have you had clashes with, I guess that the board sets a direction. Now I'm talking about the full board, right? So I say, okay, we want labs to go in this direction or explore this and that. And you say, no, we actually believe that this. So is that a friction or is just reality?
No, it's a little bit of both because the structure we have is, I have an advisory council that, kind of has representation across the company. And then we have very tight interlocks with the business groups so that they're aware of the work that we're doing. We can receive input on areas that are of interest, but sometimes they don't know exactly what's the next big, kind of disruptive thing. So there's a back and forth that we'll work on there. But the other benefit we have is being not embedded in a product team is, we're kind of the Switzerland of the company. We can have an objective, and it's critical that we have an objective viewpoint that way. In fact, I'll have a meeting coming up next month with the tech committee of our board, and that's the exact conversation they want to hear are, what are some of the big trends that are coming, and what is our perspective on, is the company, are we over-investing in certain areas, under-investing in others? And we can have that conversation without then a general manager of a product line of like, what are you doing? You should be, in more supportive of our things.
Now you're part of a global company. It's I mentioned time ago that I had some dealings with Sun Microsystems, and that was 20 years ago, and we had to have some IP discussions, so I brought my lawyer from Oamaru, which 95% of the time deals with farmers. Sun had lawyers through all 12 time zones. They were all seated in the same, they were all in the same conference call. Now, the manager and me thought, okay, I'm spending, a couple of $100 per hour to my lawyer to be there. How much is that costing to that corporate in terms of having all these people just to say something or not? The question is, are you measuring how much are you wasting in, overheads? Or you try, I know that you will say, yes, we are lean, we are fast, but reality, how do you improve your processes?
Yeah, no, it's, rest assured, there is a group that looks at the metrics very closely in terms of overhead and how, essentially every dollar is spent. So, for us, it's very calculated. There's a very kind of strict annual budgeting process. A lot of it, it's not completely zero-based budgeting, but let's say we spend a lot of time and energy ensuring the company's running as efficiently as possible.
Because, there is a myth about move fast and break things, or 20% of your time, or let's do an IPO of $1 trillion, and then suddenly all these state-of-the-art or brand new startups become standard companies. I still remember when a student of mine said in 1998, have you seen this new browser called Google? Well, these things become standard companies. So, and at some stage, they reinvent themselves. We were talking about Intel this morning. So at what stage are HPE these days? It's consolidated, it needs to reinvent itself, it's going forward, it's stable, it's just doing its job.
Yeah, I would say going forward. Any tech company, for the most part, is always in a state of evolution. So I think we just completed, or we're not in a little bit of a lull state with the acquisition of Juniper, because it says, okay, we want to double down or make this large investment in networking because we think it's so core to a lot of what happens in the space. So that's just the latest, and I can keep going back, and some decisions really good, some really bad. But you did remind me of something. I was thinking when you mentioned startups, that's another I think dynamic that has ebbed and flowed over the years. So if I go back a few years ago, we actually had a investment arm of the company, and they would invest in early stage startups. And I spent a large amount of my time helping do some of that analysis and understanding, well, should we make an investment there, or is it something we should create additional products around? Like, what's the right fit? And it proved to be very successful if we were just being a hedge fund company, okay? But that wasn't really the point. In fact, it got to the point where we would help so many of these get a foothold and scale their business. Then when we would look at it as well, gosh, maybe we should just, kind of bring them in, acquire them full time. Well, they were kind of too expensive to do it at that point. We had helped them kind of grow to a point where it didn't make sense. And so now we're back on the kind of the train of, well, we want, it's all about owned IP and making sure we're doing more and more organically. So that's an example of how, the controllers we talked about, earlier, how, there's, quote, different buckets of money and how they spend it. Do you put it into R&D? Do you put it in acquisition? Do you put it into, a startup community fund? It's always a shell game.
Yeah. So, and let's talk about Andrew Wheeler. Talk about the individual who is spending a week with us here. I just invited you because, the conversation went in this way. Tristan Kroger was here in Multicore World in 2018. Then we have Samantika Suri. We have, a number of people that I believe that either with you or to you are working to you. And then the conversation was precisely in one conference in Europe, and I said, well, who are you going to send? And he literally said, well, maybe it's about time that I go to see what's happening down there. Now, of course, I would like your opinion, but there is, I always say that Multicore World and New Zealand represents tip of the iceberg of the, how can I say, innovation. It's said that innovation happened in the fringes. It's hardly being more in the fringes than in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So you don't live in Silicon Valley, you don't live in Boston 128. How do you manage your lab in a relatively marginal space? You live in Colorado, right? So would you compare New Zealand with Colorado, or the difference of having 14 hours flight versus half an hour flight to here and there? What would you tell us, New Zealand, that we can feel ourselves being in Palo Alto or Boston or something?
Well, it's never been easier as far as the connectivity and the ability to connect. So, and I think the international collaboration is a key part of it. You have to have a pulse on what's going on, around the world, not just the U.S., but there are plenty of other, kind of hotbeds of talent and activity, whether it's in India, Israel, Europe. It's all over. So the trick is, how do you spend your time and energy? How do you stay current on these things? How are you intentional about connecting with the community that's out there? And that's one reason I think, meetings like this are so appealing, because, in 1 week, right, I can get exposure to what's the tip of what's happening across the world. And so much of it does come from, if we look historically, comes from, the HPC community. So, for me, it's a great first of all, I love it. I love the content. It just intellectually, it's kind of my people, so that's an easy fit. And you learn a lot. You make connections. You take things away. I've got 3 pages of notes right here on people I want to connect and other work I want to compare against.
So let's open to the floor. If anyone want to ask anything to Andrew or Mr. Wheeler, director of HPE Labs, or I just keep grilling him with sort of questions. So there is a question. Yes, Patricia. Oh, behind. Can you stand up? Because, I mean, we are not...
I'm not that tall. I don't know if there is a lot of difference. So we have been hearing a lot about quantum computing, photonics. I'm trying to think something else. I think those are the biggest trends right now. Can you talk about some technologies that we're going to see in the next 10 years powering computing? I'm talking about things like memory stores or spintronics or, I don't know, artificial spin eyes, mechanical systems, analog computing, neuromorphic, all those things that are still kind of on development. So what is the position on those that you guys have? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good list of possibilities, and
she missed time travel.
There are a lot of motivations that would say, the timing would be right but each of those, whether you're talking neuromorphic or silicon photonics, quantum, look, they all face tremendous technical challenges, first of all. And then just like the lunch conversation I had today with the SADRAM folks is, a lot of times it's not just the technology, it's the business dynamics and the timing. So a lot of factors sometimes have to come together. But I think we will certainly, the motivation to have breakthroughs in computing, especially for lower power solutions, kind of fit for purpose solutions is certainly there, the demand's there. So it's kind of craving, I think, some of those breakthroughs. Photonics is another great one, right? We've worked on, for years. And, right, the technology's been in a pretty good place for a while, but, just the business model and, well, how do you make it affordable? You get into those things. And slowly but surely, they're being worked on and, the ecosystem is evolving. And so, it's going to get there, but, it's hard to say definitively, 5-10 years, is there, just really something earth-shattering? Most things happen at a pretty, fairly slow, evolving rate. Every once in a while, you'll get a big bang on something, and, that certainly happens, but it's from an engineering and product development, that's usually not the case.
No, Ilkay, yes.
So the lab concept is really, it speaks out to me in general. And that's not a new concept, of course, but I think there is a need for industry labs more than ever. And in a way that also brings new work models with it. So especially right now in the US and everywhere, AI is pushing for industry involvement in research and new models for public-private partnerships or other types of partnerships. Where do you see the industry going in that direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, I did an interview a couple of years ago with a couple of professors. They were writing, I don't know if it was a book or they're writing something on this very topic, just kind of the history of industrial research labs and what was the trend and where were things going. So I'll have to go, dig that up. But yeah, I would agree. And I think this element of owned IP is now kind of back in front a lot. And look, I'm really careful with my team and how we approach the product teams if we have an idea or we want to collaborate on something, because I always say this, look, they always have more work they're not looking for more work, okay? So that's how good the idea and compelling, that's how good it has to be for them to say, okay, we are literally going to stop doing something that we know we can generate revenue on to go do this. I mean, that's a really hard fit. But at the same time, there are enough wins there. The best ideas at the right time with the right opportunity will float to the top. So there is a way to do it. But look, we're all, at the end of the day, we're measured on impact. And so, to the controllers, we're part of the overhead. So we've got to be showing impact. And for us, it's about, and I think for any industry lab, it's got to be direct impact or indirect revenue impact. So direct is always easy to measure. It's this feature and this product, it's sold for that amount. Okay, that's an easy one. Indirect is the harder one, and arguably where we are the most useful. It may be oftentimes I can get maybe my foot in the door with a customer or a conversation before anyone else. Just to, hey, this customer, we don't do any business. They want to understand, future technology. What are some of the emerging trends?
You can't have a non-hostile approach.
Yeah.
So you're not an account manager. So
it's that, and then the last thing, and I think maybe gets to kind of your point as well. It's a big part of the talent. I can bring and hire and retain people in the company that else, they may be just bored doing something else. And so there's a level of talent that I think every company needs to have somewhere. And for us, the way we're structured, the business we operate in, it tends to be a good fit, and we attract probably more top talent than you would think. Maybe, if you thought, well, HP, when I came out of school, it was, the top place you wanted to go work. Nowadays you may, a lot of things happening. Well, maybe it's OpenAI, or it's, some new glamorous startup. But for us, we can still, at least, certainly in our group, attract really top level talent.
Well, still Steve Wozniak worked for HP.
Say that again?
Steve Wozniak used to work for HP.
Not only Steve Wozniak, in fact, there's a famous story of Steve Jobs.
At 12 years old, Steve Jobs.
Yeah, so Steve Jobs, I guess, reached out, cold called Bill Hewlett, and, was working on an electronics project, and, was looking for some free parts or something. And, Bill Hewlett ended up helping him and saying, hey, why don't you intern with us?
Well, the story is, it's a YouTube video from Steve Jobs. By the way, the young people, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, they created Apple. Just in case,
Which HP passed on, by the way, the idea of it.
Well, there is a venture capital firm, I don't remember by now, still the Bessemer Partners.
Yeah.
Every venture capital firm has, okay, this is our portfolio. Look how lucky we are. These guys were honest enough to present their anti-portfolio, which is the list of everything that they passed, including a couple of guys in a garage, which Andy Bechtolsheim later gave them 100K, but that's a different story. And Steve Jobs was one of them. But the story of this, which I believe that it's important to see, particularly from my entrepreneurial point of view, Steve Jobs, it's on a video from, I don't know, decades ago, presenting the example that if you need something, have you tried to ask?
What's the worst that can happen? They'll say no.
And he did exactly that. He was a teenager, and he just asked directly Dave Packard for extra parts here and there, and one thing led to another, and that he learned about directly from there. Which brings me up to, sorry, Mark was going to ask a question.
Yes, thank you. And it was good that Ilke got the microphone first, because it was a good segue. I'd love to get your perspective in a little bit more detail about how you think about managing research, and I'll give you a little of my background. I was in Sun Microsystems labs for 10 years. where we had a grand old time, did lots of good research, publications, had student interns, did university funding, and I felt like I was a researcher, and I was pretty happy with that. Then we got acquired by Oracle, and Oracle management had a different view of research, which I spent more or less my whole time in Oracle Labs being. I was Oracle Labs New Zealand for 15 years. That's no more, but we won't talk on the microphone about that. But it was a different mindset from management there. And I remember one of the very early conversations when we were talking with some senior product folks and saying how we had done, we'll see, I was doing multi-core algorithms and proving them correct before there were multi-cores, right?
Yeah.
And we were telling them, we look 5 years ahead, and, we started to try to brag about how work that we'd done 5 years earlier was now being incorporated into Java, and this guy cut me off and said, no, 5 years is bullshit. And I thought, I wonder how this is going to go. But how it went was sort of okay. Our management was more, not so bad. But I guess my question is how to balance how much rope that you allow researchers to have. I find it almost physically impossible to work on something that I'm not interested in working on. But we find things that our management are happy for us to work on, and we're happy to work on, so great, we go for it. And then they kind of get a little bored with it. And then they say, why don't you find something else? And it's devastating. But I understand, like you're just saying, you've got to have impact, So how do you think about those issues? How do you balance them? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I think...
How many years is bullshit?
Yeah, even going back to Ilke's question a little bit, again, I think a lot of the researchers we attract are the ones that of course, they may, they want to go deep, but there's also that they want to see their work realized. So maybe they don't completely have the patience, or at least they have enough self-awareness right now to know, okay, look, I'm not just going to be doing, really basic research and cranking out papers, and that's my, that's where I'm going to put my energy. They really do desire to see something, out making a difference in a product way, right? Look, we need both, obviously, to progress. So yeah, it's enough. And probably one lesson I've learned, because I joined the lab, I did bulk of my career, I was in research and development. I did silicon development. That was a lot of my history. And when I joined the labs group, I would say it was still very much, probably leaned a little more towards the academic side. It was a lot about just papers and patents and going to conferences and, not necessarily bringing a lot of that back to the company and influencing strategy and product direction. So that's really been, I think, the kind of the model that's worked well. Kind of the state we're at right now is to do a lot of that, influence company strategy, be that objective voice, collaborate closely with the product teams, either on things that we know we want to get into product, or at least, look, we know we have to have a point of view on it. So, maybe that's a paper and that's just kind of research right now, and then we'll see kind of where it goes. It's been, probably a really good balance that has worked. One thing I will say that doesn't work, and I don't really like the term, is technology transfer. So I think this idea that you can develop something completely independently and then, have kind of this attitude of, well, okay, storage organization, here you go. We've got a proof of concept and a demo, so take it and run. That doesn't work so well for a variety of reasons. But it's more of a personal, it's more of a human nature kind of thing than it is business or technical.
Would be that the difference between a corporate lab and a university? I mean, let's take apart the need to teach or publish, or is the sense of urgency a difference, or which will be the difference between HPE labs and university?
Yeah. The measurements, the measure of success is just different, right? In a university environment, you're going to be measured on, yeah, you know, how's your department growing? You know, what's your students? You know, patents, publications, how many, you know, research funds are you bringing in? Whereas ours is more nuanced. The papers, the publishing is an outcome of the work, not the initial focus. But it's also important for us to do the tight collaborations, to have you know, even some of that external funding piece to show that you know, that we're developing tight relationships, or we are working on joint things together. That is an important part, I think, of our role in the company, whether that's with the university or with part of a national initiative. That turns out that's a pretty important part of the charter as well.
And on others' question, yes, Chris.
Hi. So you were talking in one of the answers earlier about the direct versus indirect impact. And so I realized that the context for industrial research labs has changed since the 1970s. But I'm casting my mind back to Bell Labs, RIP. Patricia asked earlier about what hardware things that HPE Labs is working on. With my software hat on, what's the next Unix? What's going to come out of HPE Labs on the software side?
Can you please disclose to him who are you?
Oh, sorry, Chris Edsel, University of Cambridge.
Yeah, I met Chris.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, I'll
running a Unix on my laptop right now. And
you're running what?
Running a Unix on my laptop right now, and a derivative of Unix on my phone. So yeah, hugely impactful work from a research lab.
Yes.
What's coming down the line?
I'll hit on some of this tomorrow in the talk, so you'll have to come back. I'm a little worried there's going to be no one. There will be no one here late tomorrow. So, but from the software side, you know, a lot of the work is around orchestration using AI for a number of different things. There's a concept running around, not just within our group, but now we're starting to see it kind of emerge in at SC and some other places around this notion of an agentic OS, an operating system, you know, harnessing agents, but it's you know, it's informed by, you know, kind of how a traditional operating system works. So I would say that's a lot of it, but you know, things that get into, you know, advanced power management. So a number of features from the orchestration and management side of the house for networking, for cloud environments, you name it.
Luca.
Hey, maybe a question from somebody from academia. First of all, thanks a lot for the nice chat. And it's great to hear that your organization in particular, you're successful in recruiting people. I assume a good portion of them right out of school, probably out of master, most likely PhD. Mm-hmm. So are we doing a good job? Or given the scenario that we are in and all the uncertainty, and probably not many people know where we are going, do you have any recommendation for the talents and the development that we should do, we faculty in academia, over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years?
Yeah,
in terms of skill on changes.
Yeah, I mean, I loved Karen's answer this morning as far as, you know, curriculum and you know, maintaining that balance of things. Look, the other thing that never hurts is anything that can be done, even just on the communication side of things. Like, just, you know, it's one thing to have an idea, and this is something I see all the time, where it's hard to extract, okay, you need to communicate that value. We need to refine your message and how you think about this, and think about, well, look, it's not just the technology. What about, you know, the business aspect? What about the market dynamics? Are you being intellectually honest on the competitive aspect of all of this? So, you know, can you get in front of a customer or a potential, you know, DARPA program manager and make your case. Those soft skills are very hard, I think, to refine. And by nature, I think a lot of us from math, science, engineering, that's maybe not, that's not our first order of strength.
Thanks.
Sarah.
One of the things that has come up a few times is the cost, right? Not just hardware limitations, but the cost. And we're certainly finding some of our customers are wanting to explore, implement solutions, but the cost doesn't give them the benefit they need for the ROI. So as fundamentally a hardware company, what is Hewlett Packard's thoughts, or even yours personally, around what the next few years is going to look like when it comes to actually being able to afford to actually do the things that we want to do to solve the problems of the world in an effective way?
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I would say we're pretty balanced. Yeah, there's a heavy, infrastructure component, but look, software is what drives it all, workloads and the end state. So, look, I think we're in a period, and again, we've seen this many times in the industry where I think it's, I used to have a slide that kind of showed the ebbs and flow of, well, you go to a period of generalization and then specialization. Generalization, specialization. It's about, I don't know, Luca, what would you say, 20 years or so is kind of the... Yeah. So yeah, we're in a period right now where, look, it's really expensive to buy GPU capacity, especially at scale. Even commodity things we took for granted, like memory and SSDs are, this year it's going to be painful. But that will pass a little bit. There will be some creative solutions that come to bear. We were talking yesterday about the market being efficient. That maybe, Patricia, will accelerate, I think, some of the technologies, whether it's neuromorphic or analog compute or things, that'll help. SADRAM team, same thing. This could be a really good inflection point, opportunity. So, there's no easy answer in the short term. So you just have to, I think, get creative a little bit, understand, hey, how can we collaborate? How can I, if I can't afford to, run a large job right now, well, who do I know? Who did I meet in this audience that could maybe, get me access? We have the same problem. If I want to run a large, quantum simulation job at scale, well, guess what? I have to call in favors and, we put a little teamwork together, with NVIDIA, and before you know it, we're running cycles on Perlmutter at NERSC. So it never, I guess, even back to the other question, beyond kind of the communication, soft skills, the networking, don't underestimate the power of networking, who you meet, who you know, who can help you then get from point A to point B. And I'm sure, Nicholas could probably speak a lot to that one as well.
I'm very shy. Fred, who, by the way, used to be in Freescale.
Yeah.
So Andrew, some time ago, you talked about controllers having very careful review of the impact. And you talked about direct impact and indirect impact. And you said direct impact is easy to quantify. So this is, of course, a challenge for research centers within universities as well. Because ultimately, when there is financial pressure, they will take a look to see whether you have actually generated enough funds or not. What is your advice, or what are the good ways that you have found in terms of articulating the indirect impact that really has been meaningful for the organization that you worked at, in this case, HPE?
Yeah, I think, for us, again, and our metrics, and companies are certainly, they're set up to have these tensions by design, meaning finance, legal, cybersecurity, right? They're all given a mandate to say, you go maximize this. And so that, creates some natural tensions. But for us, some of those indirect metrics are things that really resonate, are the collaborations, or, whether it's an EU project that we're part of where, some of our funding is offset as part of it, or with the DOE or DARPA or something like that. So that's kind of an easy one. And again, anything, we can be doing to help sales, right? We're all, quote, part of sales. Anything we can help an account team, either with the relationship or help, even be part of the solution architecture team because there's something kind of unique about an environment. Those are a couple of just the easy wins for us. And that's something, I track and report on in kind of our annual report out. And on that note, I want everyone to join me saying thank you, Andrew, for this candid.
Yeah.